That was very well told. Uh, and I was thinking, how is it that Dionysus could be the one to help bring us into that uh, new world? And you had sketched kind of uh, the gods or the Titans and the gods and everything lineage. And it seemed like it goes from more primordial to more human, with Cronos kind of being this like unfeeling, massive force of nature. He's associated with time itself, with fate, is sort of like the fading of everything. You're just a little tiny mote in this huge, cosmic movement, and you're just a flash in the pan. And then Zeus, he's more relatable. He's the sky, thunder, still primordial elements, but or excuse me, it's more like natural elements now, where it's there's an unpredictability and destructiveness to it, but also life-giving. Um, and then with Dionysus, there he is right here with us in civilization. He teaches us how to cultivate the fruits of the earth. There is and there's a wildness to them, even the look of the vine, as opposed to, say, like some types of trees or anything. And the vine does need this structure. So we have this role, and it's sort of linked with the Apollonian there, where the vine needs this scaffolding on which to grow to bear fruit the best for us and to do what fruit naturally does if left out on the ground. It will ferment in some way, and animals can get drunk on it and everything. But we've learned how to cultivate that into this thing. Again, here's the Apollonian of beauty, where wine lovers and sommeliers or whatever can talk about all the different forces and the wind or the amount of sunlight and the amount of rain and the climate and all that stuff and the type of soil or whatever to make this certain kinds of wine or anything. Anyway, it's just this sort of from the basics of civilization, of cultivation of this plant to this high sort of culture kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I respond?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to cut you off. There's a lot in that. That's so good. Like one, I see like you're drawing the line from Kronos to Zeus, and yeah, Zeus has the storms and the thunder and stuff, but in Kronos, like Kronos is the storm, he is the thunder, he is destruction, he is natural, he is wild, he is time, he is just, and with Zeus, you have the human relationship to Zeus becomes like, oh, you can pray to Zeus, you can propitiate Zeus. Zeus is an intercessor between the wild nature and and humanity, almost a
Mm,
protector figure in this sense.
mm,
And it's a sort of roundabout way of trying to control nature, of trying to form a civilization. And
mm,
you have the Olympians that help God, the Olympic pantheon that kind of help form Greece. Um, and I love that Dionysus is he's like you said, he's worshipped in nature, not in the city.
mm,
He's sort of this form of wildness and madness, and yet not destructive, but not evil, not made wrong, not made like not cast out. So he's trying to come in. He's this wildness that's trying to come back into civilization. And that link that you made of the structure, the what's the word that the vines grow on? The trellis and the vines, being sort of a mixture of the Apollonian structure, the civilizational structure, and the wilderness sort of winding through it, and the two of them together forming the grapes. Um, that's great. I mean, that would be the ideal blending of the two forces right there. Um, so that's all awesome. And then I wanted to say something about the grapes that I've been thinking about. You described it like the grapes fall, sometimes they ferment, sometimes the animals can get drunk on them. At some point, somebody figured that out and they're like, oh, if we can contain this, if we can get some sort of structure around the process, maybe we can take advantage of this as well. And this is something that occurred to me as far as Dionysus being both a god of wine and a god of, death and or resurrection and or, destruction and rebirth, that back in these days, like you didn't go to the grocery store. You had grapes in grape season, and you had wheat in wheat season, and you had whatever it was when it was ready to grow. And if you wanted to eat grapes or wheat or something when it was out of season, you couldn't order them from, New Zealand or whatever, hot houses in Mexico. Like, you were kind of out of luck. So anything in those days that would take food, which you had to eat when it was ripe or it would spoil. You couldn't necessarily keep because you didn't even have refrigeration. Maybe you could, like, I don't know, stick it in a river or something to cool it, but it definitely wouldn't last over a long period. Everything would dissolve. So it was just this constant struggle of finding food. And here you have grapes, which are, sweet. They're forms of nutrition. They grow certain times of the year. But if you take them and if you crush them, if you kill them and destroy them, if you submit them to being torn apart, and then you take that and you put it in a jar and keep it kind of protected, eventually, however it worked, I don't know how they did it in those days because I'm sure they didn't have vats and all the stuff we have these days, but
Mm.
they would make the wine out of that, and the wine would last. So it was this sort of like death and like wine in and of itself is allowing the death process of the food, putting it through this alchemical transformation into something that you can keep on the shelf in a jar, and it will last for, maybe they didn't have perfect sealing methods, but it definitely would
Mm.
last longer than a grape would.
Yeah.
It would last you at least through the winter. It would last you, until the next vintage. And there was this sense of like, you crush the grapes, you put them in the jar, and you seal them. So there's this moment of death. There's this moment of the grapes passing into the underworld, into the darkness,
Mm.
being removed, and
Mm.
then, you know, 3 months. I don't know how long it takes to ferment wine in those days, but like 6 months
Mm.
later, a year later, 3 months later, they would
Mm.
open the jar, and the wine itself would be now drinkable.
Yeah.
And it would be raised to a higher level because it wasn't just grape juice. Now you could get drunk on it, which is
Yeah.
kind of a magical thing if you don't, if you're not doing it all the time. There's
Yeah.
something to that. But I think there, like, it was the first time I've seen the link between the winemaking process, and whether we're talking Dionysus or Christ, the winemaking process and the resurrection process, and the
Yeah.
dying, being in the underworld, coming back, and being like a spiritual being instead of a physical being, somehow a raised up. You're not a grape anymore. You're a wine. You're now wine. You're alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's